And good evening. My name is Dr. Lawrence, and I am the founder and executive director for A Bridge of Light, where we focus on disrupting the school to prison pipeline and enabling the reentry of formerly incarcerated persons. But we do something else. We do something else. We empower underserved communities to overcome obstacles which historically hindered their progress to access human needs. And our pillars are protection of womanhood, intentional mentorship, and chronic disease awareness. And January, just focusing on our chronic disease awareness. January, Dr. Jadan Phillips and Dr. Jabril Johnson, we examined the relationship between violence and cervical cancer. Yes, violence and cervical cancer. And in February, I had the wonderful opportunity to be a guest on the Super Bowl edition of What's Behind the Bra, Monique Bass's What's Behind the Bra, as that was Cancer Prevention Month. Cancer Prevention Month, and I discussed my journey with colon cancer. January was Cervical Cancer Month, and February was Cancer Prevention Month. Both of these events are on YouTube. So if you care to take a look at them, very, very informative, instrumental. As we wind down in February, to our Cancer Prevention Month focused on colorectal cancer, it gave me an opportunity as a cancer survivor to reflect on not only my two battles and victories with respect to colon cancer, however, others' victories, and unfortunately, to take a pause and just acknowledge those who just didn't make it with respect to colon cancer. So tonight we're going to take an advantage. We're going to place attention not necessarily on the colon cancer patient, but we're going to put it on the caregiver. There's unique circumstances in which the caregiver experiences, and tonight we want to bring it to light in a manner to ensure that we have the correct degree of sensitivity when speaking to uh, caregivers and their journey with respect to uh, cancer prevention and support. So with that, I just have a few things. I just want to level the bubbles here. I just want to level the information. What is a caregiver? And I think one of the participants tonight, Miss Keisha Howard, say, listen, we have to have a common understanding of what a caregiver is. It's a paid family member or neighbor or a friend who provides regular or long-term support to help a person with dementia, diabetes, cancer. So although I had a caregiver two times during my battle. There's caregivers that go through that provide support to others with other chronic diseases and or contagious diseases. They assist with daily tasks, and they also act as a primary support system for a patient's quality of life. And with that, we just need to look at, according to AARP, last year there were 63 million people, 63 million caregivers. That's a lot. Caregivers to chronically ill people, because sometimes just affordability of that service is just so great that one can't afford it. So family members, neighbors, and others chip in to enable quality of life for those who are experiencing chronic diseases. And listen, it's emotionally draining, it's physically draining, and financially draining. So tonight we're going to discuss some of this. We want to create a degree of sensitivity around this phenomenon. So we could be better prepared, because no one signs up to be a caregiver for their parent, for their child early on, and so forth. So many of us do not do that. So the purpose of this event tonight is to initiate and advance, in some cases, a conversation around the effects of caregiving, to identify some issues and sensitivities associated with caregiving with someone with a terminal disease like cancer, and also provide insights and tools to assist current and future caregivers today. The conversation was centered around, but not limited to, living with uncertainty, quality of life, compliance to treatment protocols, anxieties, post-traumatic stress disorders. Yes, a caregiver can experience that as well. So, an emotional support given to that particular caregiver. So, with that, I want to quickly get off the stage and I want to start introducing our caregivers because they are the ones that we're focusing on tonight. Yes, I'm a former cancer patient and cancer survivor 2 times. But now let's focus on the actual caregiver. And with that, we have our first caregiver. And this is Keisha. And Keisha, would you just introduce yourselves to our viewing public?
Good evening. My name is Keisha, and I am a cosmetologist and a social worker. Strange, right? I am a former caregiver to my son during the years of 2020 to 2022 as he was navigating his cancer journey. He was initially, formally diagnosed in October of 2020 with osteosarcoma.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for joining us tonight. Thank you. Also, so that's a mother. We have a mother and we have a father. Our second panelist.
Good evening. My name is Jadan Phillips. I am a physician. I am also a father of a cancer patient. My son, I didn't realize we had this in common, Kisha. He had osteosarcoma as well. In 2010, he was diagnosed and passed about 2 years later. So I was with him for that, journey, and it was difficult.
Got it. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much. And we look forward to your lived experience to help us navigate those complexities, which current and future caregivers will encounter. With that also, so we have a father, we have a mother, and we have a husband. We have a husband.
Hey, hello. Thank you, Dr. Lawrence, for asking me to be a part of this podcast and this panel. So I'm a husband. My wife was diagnosed with uterine cancer in 2020, late 2020, and I would say still a caregiver. Thank goodness, just like you, she has beat it. But every time we go for checkups and scans, it takes you back to the what if and the what may lie ahead. So just continuing this journey, and that's the way we view it. It is a journey, like many other things. So once again, happy to be a part of this esteemed group, and thanks for the invite.
Thank you so very much. We have a mother, a father, a husband, and we have a wife. Panelist number 4.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Talira, and I am a former and current, I would say, caregiver to my husband, who has had cancer twice, stage 3C colon cancer in 2021, and in 2025, it progressed to stage 4 colon cancer. And I'm grateful to have Dr. Lawrence allow us to get on this platform and share our experiences with it as a caregiver. And so I'm grateful for that. Thank you, Dr. Lawrence.
Thank you. Thank you. We have a mother, we have a father, we have a husband, and we have a wife, and we have a child, we have a son. Panelist number 5.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Scotty. I am a retired Army officer, the 45th Army Surgeon General, and I am a former caregiver. And Unique fact is, even as the Army Surgeon General, you're not free from the responsibilities of being a son, a husband, a spouse, a caregiver. I was a caregiver 3 times. First was for my mother. She passed of colon cancer in 2013. And then my mother-in-law, my mom was a short one, 23 days from the time we found out that she had colon cancer before she died, 23 days. My mother-in-law, same year, beginning caregiving at 2013, she passed away in 2019 from throat cancer, in which my wife and I, took care of her, at home. And then my father, 2014 to 2016, he passed away from heart failure. And looking forward to engaging with you all tonight. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. By no means are we going to exhaust just the information associated with being a caregiver. But as I said earlier, I want the role of a bridge to light is to make difficult conversations as common as the air we breathe. This is a difficult conversation. This is a very emotional conversation, and this conversation is not going to end at the. My hope is that it doesn't end at the end of this podcast. That we continue outside in our circles, and we encourage others to have the conversation. Because I just got information the other day. It's going to be one of those, folks. It's going to be one of those tonight. All right, so get your tissue out. It's going to be one of these. I received information of a 30-year-old man who was diagnosed with colon cancer yesterday. So colon cancer is no longer an old man or old woman's disease. It's not that at all. So we have to have the conversation so we can heal each other and stay on the proactive opposed to the reactive, because chronic diseases such as colon cancer, if you're reactive to it, then sometimes it's too late. It's too late. So we want to stay on top of it and stay active for it. So with that, tonight our discussion will consist of 3 parts. It'll consist of the actual address the question. When we ask a question and the panelists address the question, then they will say, what kind of feelings that they have afterwards, feelings of guilt, because some of us have guilt, trauma, depression, anger, not understanding and so forth. And how did they cope? How did they cope? Because those are the tools that we want to provide this viewing family. And also I want you to share. I want you to comment. I want you to like, but I want you to share this because you may not get anything out of it, but the person you share it with possibly will. So let's not be selfish. Let's share it to our hundreds and thousands of members that we have on Instagram, Facebook, and all these other unique platforms that we view funny things on. Well, it's not so funny, and I'll ask us to kind of share this. So with that, we're going to get right onto it. We're going to get right on into this. So with that, we are going to, as a parent, most of us can't even imagine the fear, anxiety, hope that you experienced. But most importantly, as a mother that has children, after hearing the news that your son's cancer was terminal, what was the biggest challenge you faced when managing caregiving duties with work, family, and personal responsibilities? Keisha.
So I chronicled my journey for Cameron. And initially, so I looked back at a video last night just so I could be more prepared at what the doctor had said. And she gave us a lot of hope, but I understand that medical professionals must do that. My uncle was there with us. He is a medical professional, and he's the one who helped us kind of navigate this entire journey. So In October of 2020, I had a lot of hope for Cameron to live until I started doing my own research. The formal moment when he was placed on hospice was in November of 2020, and my entire family was there. It was very challenging because it was after COVID and they had a lot of COVID restrictions. So many of the family members who heard it online were devastated. I think that at the time when the doctors were sharing with him, they were using language that made him not understand what was actually happening. And his middle brother, because I have 5 children, he's my baby boy, have one after him. And he kind of walked over to him and said, "Do you understand that they're telling you that you're going to die?"
Mm.
And it was a very hard space to deal with. My youngest daughter, she really haven't talked about it much because on the day that my son was diagnosed and placed on hospice, well, I'm not diagnosed, but placed on hospice, a really close family friend, he was 20, he passed away from COVID. So it was a very hard space and time for us navigating, one, listening and hearing that my children's brother would be passing away at any given time, and to have a really close friend pass away on the same day. So that was a very hard year for us because within that window, we lost about 4 individuals. Navigating work was hard because during COVID, I was deemed non-essential because my primary income was as a hairstylist. And I was just kind of getting back into work. So it was hard to walk away because I needed to work because I had been off work for a while and still care for him. I do acknowledge my family because they were very supportive. We provided a lot of healthy caregiving spaces. I think the one that was the most unhealthy for me was not being able to rest, and caregivers need rest.
Yes, ma'am.
But it was an honor to care for Cameron, and I made sure that he knew that even when the times got very challenging, when he didn't feel like a man, um, I needed him to understand that no matter what happened in life, I'm going to be there. I'm going to care for you. I'm going to do the things that I need to do because I'm your mama. I changed your pampers as a baby, and I'm going to change your pampers as a grown man. And he was able to digest that, but that was part of healthy caregiving. Just letting him know that it was such an honor.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing. And ladies and gentlemen, this is not an easy thing. However, we have to make these conversations um, more common because our silence amongst Black and Brown and underserved communities, we don't talk about this, we don't talk about that. It's killing us. It's killing us. And this is not an easy discussion. So, how did you cope, Keisha? You talked about some of the things that came. You spoke about your anxieties and work and so forth. How did you cope, and how would you recommend someone in your position cope, given your particular case?
Again, love of family, friends, co-workers, people whom I had went to elementary, middle school, high school with, whom I had not seen in years, were very supportive of me in ways for finances. I would get people cash at me money, people whom I hadn't spoken to, but on Facebook and social media. Family members who are strong in the medical field, understanding that caring for loved ones is hard. Because initially going in, I felt like I was superwoman, and I told doctors and nurses, I can do it. And they're like, it's going to be hard. I'm like, I can do it. Like, it's going
Yes.
to be hard. And I'm like, I can do it. until that moment said, oh, this is what they're talking about. When your weight decreases, when you have no sleep, because you want to make sure that you're aware of what's happening with your loved one, but you need to rest, and you constantly taking cat naps. So my coping at best was the fact that I have older children and we all took turns, but it was very challenging for me to allow them to help me because I'm the mother and I want to make sure that I take care of my baby. And sometimes it got so hard to where I would try to wake up because I would pick him up and bring him to the toilet or whatever. And it just got to the point where once he had his cell phone and I heard him whispering because he called his sister to come give him a glass of water because he didn't want to wake me up because I was so tired. And I just thought that was just so beautiful. And I still wanted to get up and get the water, but my body would not allow me to because I was just so tired. So allowing my family to helped me cope. Having a lot of the people who loved on me making themselves available to me to just to be able to vent or say how I was feeling and allow me to feel what I was feeling and say what I wanted to say. And even having conversations with him because he was still so concerned about others, even when he was going through all of what he went through.
Thank you, Keisha. Thank you so much. Thank you for allowing us some time in your world. Thank you. Thank you. Dr. Phillips, Jadan, my brother, my friend, you being a father, being a medical doctor, can you describe just the possible dilemma that you were placed in, being faced with, being a parent with someone with terminal cancer on one hand, but then on the other hand, you're a family doctor and you're preserving life, So can you take us through that experience, sir?
Well, again, thank you for the privilege of being part of this conversation. Keisha, I am so sorry for your loss. I feel your pain. God bless you. God bless your family. So my son was a football player, and in Baltimore, the city poly game is a big deal. If you know, you know. And he was on JV the year before, and he had a really strong game. So he was looking forward to coming back the next year on varsity and do his thing, as we say. So as he was training, became aware that he was having this shoulder pain. Now I thought initially, it was, Dad, I'm doing a lot of different exercises. I think it's just that. So no big deal. Again, as a former college athlete, as a person who's a lifetime workout person, I understand soreness. But the pain started to get worse. And I remember one time he was sitting still and I felt like he was minimizing the pain, and I tapped him on the shoulder and he jumped. And I said, look, man, I think you need to go get an x-ray. So I can still remember it to this day. I was working, I was seeing patients, and I had just started my clinic session. So normally a session, probably 10 patients. So I was at probably patient number 2. Now for me, I'm blessed to be popular, and people will wait 6 months to get an appointment with me, which I'm very humbled that people would do that. And I remember the call was from the radiology office telling me they found a 22 centimeter lesion in his humerus, which is the bone where your bicep muscle is. and it had malignant features. Unfortunately, I wish that I didn't have the medical knowledge that I had at that time, because I knew when they said what they found that we really probably had maybe 2 years because of the size, because of the type that they speculated that it was. A malignant osteosarcoma is, people that survive from it. And I've met people, and I look at them and I thank God for them, because I know how deadly the condition is. So from the jump, I knew that it wasn't going to be a good outcome. And unfortunately, because of my medical knowledge, I couldn't shield myself from that. And I remember, just because, you grow and you feel that bad things happen to bad people. That's how we're sort of raised. You do bad things, karma is real. And I still believe that. But, I also recognize that God's choices and decisions are God's decisions. And sometimes he takes people away from us. So I, again, was floored. I was floored because of my knowledge. And I can remember, my mentality was, I'm from Queens, New York, and I'm sort of a local type of sports fan. One of the local teams is the New York Mets, which historically are a losing franchise for most years. So I used to say, to myself that if I could root for the Mets, I can. And again, trying to put a little humor to it makes it a little lighter, but it was tough, man. And at first, I can agree with Keisha. I want to do everything I can do. I'm a doctor. I'm able to handle his needs. But as she just said very eloquently, we are human, and there are, limits to what we can do. And I know for me, I was devastated, and at first, I was devastated. It was the most traumatic thing that I had ever been through up to that point in my life. I had lost grandparents, but other than that, I hadn't lost anybody in my nuclear family. So I think, again, I wish my medical knowledge was not what it was, but that wasn't the case. And the other thing I know is, as a doctor, is hope isn't always a cure. So I tried to make every day the best day that it could be, and I tried to, focus on the positive, try to focus on the full part of the cup. I mean, sounds like we had very similar children who were selfless, who were caring, who thought about other people. And I can remember one night being awake and just constantly checking on him. And he could see I was tired. And he said, "I'm sorry." And I started crying, because how could somebody that's going through something so tough be so thoughtful about somebody else? So I just tried to make sure by the time it was over, I didn't have nothing else to say to him. I wanted to make sure that everything that he needed to hear from me, from his family, that I did my best to make sure it happened. I tell you, one of the best moments of the process was him being put on hospice, because hospice gave us an opportunity to have some help, because everybody was tired. Everybody was emotionally, they were drained. Not that we were complaining about it, because this is what we had to do, because he was us. However, somebody to be there to help you deal with his pain, somebody to be there to help you deal with his anxiety, somebody to be there for whatever other symptoms he had. I was thankful that it wasn't me for that moment, because I wasn't sure if I could do it anymore because of how challenging it was. But again, I can remember I have this patient. My son passed on January 21st. And this guy makes an appointment to see me every year on January 21st. And I mean, I've had patients for over 20 years, and I figured that, again, he's just checking on me. And I said, man, why do you always make the appointment? He says, I want to make sure you are right. Now, this guy, him and I, other than me being his doctor, don't really have much in common. But, again, what you realize in these moments is we are more about our similarities than our differences as people. And then I said to him, he's like, well, how you doing? And I said, sometimes I wish that it would have been quick so I could just cut the pain off right away. And then he shared with me that he had lost his son to a drunk driver, and he left the house that morning thinking he was going to talk to him later and never had an opportunity to speak to his son again. And I thought about how blessed I was, even with this outcome, that I got to a point where I didn't have nothing else that I needed to say to him. I was good. I mean, of course, I would always want him here longer and more, but we had all the conversations that we needed to have. And I just realized, like, sometimes you don't realize, even in your pain, how blessed you are, because I see, what if my son was leaving to say, hey, Dad, I'm going to the movies, and he don't ever come back home again, and I don't ever have a chance to speak to him. So again, in the pain, it was interesting. A friend of mine was in a wedding, and I was one of the three, was getting married, and I was one of the three groomsmen, and all of the groomsmen lost kids. And I was the third of the three. And again, I'm sure everybody here understands, like, when you get a challenge like this in life, you got a choice on how you're going to deal with it, because people will give you your grace to be ugly and evil. But again, that's not going to bring you to a better place. And I remember, the groom telling me the negative things that happened to the other people that were in the wedding. And he was like, look, man, I don't want that to happen to you. So I made a choice that I was going to take this moment and use it to make me greater, because I want to be where my son is at the end of the day. And I know I got more work to do. So, again, I have really been, even at that time, I started to do yoga, because if you would have drove down my block when it first happened, I was out there in the middle of the night, sitting on the stoop crying. And I have other children. And again, when you're not the person that is emotional in that way, it could really turn people in a way like, wow, I've never ever seen you so sad and cry. And that's an additional thing you have to manage on top of the immediate situation. So, I'm glad you asked about a process, because I think, again, it is a difficult situation, but I think you have a choice on how you are going to allow that process and situation affect you. And I chose to have it be something that made me stronger. And I'm thankful for the people that I've taken care of, like my patients. I can't tell you how I was floored, because you don't do it expecting it's going to come back to you. But, you're thankful when you see that the good you have done for people, you pay it forward. And when you need it, and I needed it because, I was the first doctor in my family. So a lot of my struggle was to achieve this. So it was easy at times to be focused and locked in. And sometimes being locked in, you can just think about yourself. And, I was so humbled by just all of the people, my family. I mean, I'm the oldest of 6 children. All of my brothers and sisters stepped up. My wife, it was not her son, and she stepped up. My other children, my patients, I remember my son's funeral in Baltimore, and two of my patients came down. They had only two white guys that walked in there. And one of my frat brothers said, "Hey, you know those two people in the back?" And I was like, "Oh my God." And they ran over, as the Qs will do, and surrounded them with love and enthusiasm. At first, they're like, "Whoa." After that, they recognized how blessed that moment was. And I'm going to say this. So where I work, I'm a dean in the School of Medicine at Stony Brook University, and I have an assistant that I work with, and she is an only child, and she was caring for her mother, and her mother passed. And her mother passed at home. They had hospice involved, and the mother, the patient, my coworker, rather, I said, "Look, I know this is tough because she doesn't have any family in the New York area." And I said, "I'm going to come by and, help you out, because I can only imagine it's not like the ambulance coming. You got to arrange the funeral home. You got to make sure you have the documents. And then the hospice nurse has to come there. And again, if you are the person who's doing all the caretaking, that could be quite an emotional situation." So the hospice nurse comes to the house, and I'm sitting there, and I just always am very free with the compliments to the hospice nurse, because their grace is unparalleled, because it happens at the moments that you really need it. So this person that was there, I said, "You know what? Y'all are a blessing." She says, "Why you say that?" And I shared my story, and I had thought that this person looked familiar. And this, again, 12 years ago. And she says, "Well, where was your son and where were you at?" And I told her in Queens, and, described him. And she was the same hospice nurse that had come to my house. Wow. And it was one of her first cases. Wow. So I said, "Jadan is speaking to me saying, 'What's up, Pops? How you doing?'" But, again, when he speaks to me in the ways that when the universe lets you know that you're being thought about in more than a coincidental way, I'm just extremely thankful. Like, to be here and to be next to somebody that lost someone to osteosarcoma, that's for God, because that type of cancer is one of the most aggressive. And we did everything. We did surgery. We did different chemotherapy regimens. We did experimental regimens. We did holistic regimens. And because he handled that in such a manly way, he said to me at one point, he said to mother and myself, "I don't want to do this anymore. I just want to live life," because the side effects of the chemotherapy was so significant on him. And he stopped doing therapy. And he had about 2 months of good stuff. I think he came to the homecoming that year, Scotty, at Hope Morgan, and the bros saw him and they were like, "Wow, he looks good." But, it's like that movie Perfect Storm, when they saw the sun and they thought it was passing, it was just the eye of the storm. And then cancer came with aggressiveness, and about 2.5 months later, he had left us. But, again, it's something that is still touching me, but it has helped me be more empathetic to people. It has helped me be more compassionate to people. It's helped me be more open with my emotions, because, again, as a Black man, that's one. And I'm not even saying it's a Black thing, because I know everybody sometimes is very guarded with their emotions, but I also know the value in us being transparent right now. And I thank my son for putting me in a place where I was able to grow in that way. And I've been able, because I'll tell you, I get calls all the time from bros and people I know. "Yo, I know somebody that's losing, their son is sick, and I know how you handled it. Could you give him a call?" So again, I apologize, but I'm thankful for the tears, because I always worried that I would forget. And I know I will never forget. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much, Jadan, for just allowing us time in your world, brother. Thank you. Thank you, because somebody on this hookup got to hear that. Got to hear you and Keisha's story. Okay, you got to do it. We have to again make this conversation as common as the air we breathe. And I thank you so very much for being transparency. Transparent is definitely the word. And I encourage all of our viewers to just share, like, comment, and continue the conversation. And continue the conversation. This is a very just very stark, clean conversation. There's nothing cute about it. And just to be allowed in somebody's life this way is very unique. And I thank you for allowing us, Jadan and Keisha, to do that. Being a spouse is unlike being a parent. You married this person for better or for worse, for sickness and in health. And during COVID, that really tried a lot of us, our patience, our finances. And then some of us, it claimed our lives. And our two spouses, Monty and Talira, unfortunately, but fortunately that their spouses are still here. But unfortunately, their spouses were diagnosed with cancer during that period. So, Monty, your wife was diagnosed with cancer during COVID. What are challenges that this environment create for you? And when should a caregiver contact a medical team versus waiting to be scheduled for a medical team to engage you?
Yeah, once again, Dr. Lawrence, thanks for asking me to be a part of this, and just listening to Keisha and Dr. Phillips. One thing that's for certain, it bridges cancer bridges sickness bridges everything, and no matter how many times you tell the story, it just never gets easier. And I think that's by design. I mean, that's one of those things that makes us human and puts it to us. So yeah, we started our journey. We were youngsters just over 50. We'd been to the lake. We still boat, still water ski and have fun. And it was August, and my wife, she's like, I think I pulled a muscle in my abdomen or something. And so after about a week of that, didn't get better. She went to the primary care, and the primary care, got her in with consult for a OBGYN. And, it goes without saying that as you navigate any type of healthcare, part of that journey is also navigating the, what insurance you have and how that's going to affect and what comes of that. So one led to another. We saw that next level of specialist, and I'm an optimist by trade, so to speak. My wife, maybe not as much, but I was like, this is, and thank goodness for the the good doctors being optimists too. But so then we got the message was, hey, you're going to the 6th floor, and the only thing that's on the 6th floor has to deal in this particular building, like many of them, has to deal with cancer. Oncologist, gynecologist, oncologist. So he was highly recommended, and so you're a little suspect, and we live in the Midwest, southwestern Missouri, and is this the best care that that we can get? And fortunately, it was. And one thing led to another, and within about 6 weeks during COVID, she was in surgery. At the end of that, fortunately, we were able to get in. And so that started that journey, because now it's chemo. Surgery went pretty well, and now we're into this chemo. And so it's one of those deals where every week I go and drop her off because I can't go in, and she tells me all about it. But once again, I'm waiting out in the vehicle for a few hours, and and pick her up, and then it's the same thing, as we come back. And it's funny, we were in that building for a checkup just a few months ago, and she looked in the floor they do the chemo, and she goes, "Wow, look at that. They're not like all packed in with no curtains and everybody facing everybody kind of deal," because they had really short staffed, and they'd really used a lot of the building for some other things during that time. And I was like, wow, never really saw any of that. So as we navigate that, one of the things that came up was a lot of good friends, a lot of some friends that are medical professionals that told us that, hey, you need to get a second opinion. And we're like, well, a second opinion, I don't know. We feel pretty good with the care we've got. And we actually talked to the doctor about getting a second opinion, and would our insurance support it, and is that even viable? And so he said, yeah, absolutely. He said, this is this is a practice. It's not permanent. We don't fully know everything. So we were fortunate enough to get selected to go to Premier Cancer Institute in Texas. And so once again, it's COVID. I'm on a Zoom call out in the parking lot. I drop my wife off at this big building. Hopefully it's the right place, with throngs of folks going in. And what struck me the most was, of course, they got all the documents and everything. Got down there, and I didn't even think of that. The doctor, he said, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to confirm the diagnosis. Never even crossed my mind. I just didn't. I was just confident that that's what. But he said, we're going to confirm the diagnosis. So that was the first meeting, and the next day he came back with, we've confirmed the diagnosis, and the treatment that you received is the exact treatment that we would have done. So right then, like a calm fell over us, because we knew that we had the best there was to offer, and we couldn't go anywhere else but from there. And so thankful for that, and go into that. So we continue to be followed in both places. We fortunately have that ability, and there have been a couple of hiccups, setbacks along the way, because cancer's like that. You don't care. And we are just so thankful that we can have, a local team that is tremendous and cares for us, but also the other team. So just that peace of mind. And I know a lot of folks don't have that opportunity, but it was just, the peace of mind that brought to us. And once again, navigating our system that we have for it's not medical care. It's I would call it the financial care of how things get paid for and what happens. And it's, I'm not, I don't know the answer, but sometimes that can be a huge challenge within itself as we go.
Monty, man, thank you so very much. Cancer, as you mentioned, is such an island, as you alluded to, is such an island. Everybody has a personal, just personal relationship. It's not a one-stop shop. And, just them finding that the technique and diagnosis they were going to do based on the second choice was refreshing.
Yeah, and as a caregiver, I sometimes forget, probably my nature, that as we get ready to go to those 3-month scans and 6-month scan, I forget that, how palatable that tension is, and then it quickly takes me back to those days, and and what it is. And we always joke that before this came along, I mean, we've been married for 37 years, that, I'm not the best caregiver. I'm not a terrible patient, but I'm not the best caregiver. And that if we draw straws for who's going first, I'm peeking at the straws and I'm taking the short one because I'm not good at it. It's probably turnabout as fair play that I was thrust into that role, I guess, if you will. And oftentimes I ask myself, I'm like, well, I don't know what. Every little bit helps, whatever you can do, and it may be as easy as opening, open the door for somebody one day, because the cancer centers, I told my brother-in-law, who's works at as a radiologist tech. I said, I mean, everybody that walks through these doors is touched by cancer, and you're working around that all day. That must be, just that the weight of that. Everybody you walk amongst is dealing with cancer, and we're only dealing with it for part time. I said that must be a huge burden when you think about that.
Wow. I tell you, that sympathetic trauma, sometimes, you're just surrounded by, just people being sick and telling the stories and so forth. You just take on their sicknesses sometimes, or you take on just the effects, the side effects. So I'm just happy that, your brother-in-law is handling it in the manner in which he is, and it's just, as a patient, you want what you want when you want it. As a cancer fighter, I'm hot, I'm cold, I'm hungry, and we really don't consider, who cares for the caregiver? Who is caring for the caregiver? Parents, had a good friend of mine over 40 years. His father has dementia, and he was a solid player in the community. Now all of a sudden, we're seeing this concrete of a man just starting to shrivel up and just dissolve in front of us. And the wife, well, they've been married for over about 60 years now, over 60 years. And she's just trying to hold on, but who cares for the caregiver? Who cares for the caregiver? Jadan mentioned that self-care, as far as, he was engaged in yoga and other things, like, to kind of just make him the best version of himself, despite utilizing this tragedy as a platform. So I thank you, Monty, for sharing. And so, we are resonating. We are resonating with someone. With these viewers, when they share, it's going to be like a smorgasbord. They take some of Keisha, some of Jadan, some of Monty, a little Scotty, and then the plate will be Talira, and we just carry it back over to the table and eat what we need to eat, and, to be fed properly. But getting back to just the patient not being grateful. I can say that. I can say that as a cancer patient. You want what you want when you want it, and you hurt. There's pain involved. There's bleeding involved. There's accidents with chemotherapy that's involved, and you're non-compliant, borderline mean to everybody around you, and it just takes special people. Takes special people to be caregivers. So again, who cares for the caregiver? So that brings me to our next spouse, who's a wife. And Talira, you're a businesswoman, you're a mother, you're a wife, and like Monty, your husband was diagnosed and treated for cancer during COVID. But unlike Monty, unfortunately, your husband contracted COVID during his recovery from surgery. And your husband not only had that issue going on after surgery, after the stage 3C colon cancer surgery, but he, in 2001, but in 2025, You also was diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer. So can you just describe, your feelings of anger, of sadness, of just all your feelings that, and what you do to just bring yourself relief or cope?
Yes, it was the summer of 2021, and my husband was in a lot of pain and just kind of struggling with stomach issues, and finally gets to the ER. The ER sees something on a scan, sends us off to the doctors to say, okay, we need to do a colonoscopy and just, see what's going on in there. And it turns out after the colonoscopy, the doctor comes out and she says, your husband, she showed me the photos and she said, your husband has, there's a malignant tumor in his colon. And my husband was there. And of course, he's out of it. He's completely out of it. And so he didn't understand what she was saying. And so we get everything set up as far as doctor's appointments to see, and we're waiting for results to come in to give us the stage. And again, the ride home from the colonoscopy, he had no idea that he had cancer. He was just, again, completely out of it. And so the fear of hearing the doctor tell you that the head of your household has cancer, and we're not really sure what it is, how long, what the outcome's going to be. It was not easy to receive that information. And once we found out what stage and the different measures that we could take, and of course they wanted to do surgery, and we did. He went through surgery, and then probably about a month and a half after surgery, he contracted COVID. So of course that's the anxiety of, oh my God, is this going to take him out? Is COVID, like, I don't know what to do. And so it was very difficult. It was very difficult. Fortunately, I did have, family and friends and, folks that you can talk to and reach out to and have as an outlet. And so we got past that. We went through all the treatment, and it was very difficult on the treatment side of it because I'm in the automotive industry, and I work long hours. If anyone knows about that, I do work long hours. It's 11 hours a day. And I would take time off from work to go to treatment with him. We did that for 12 rounds of chemotherapy. It created a lot of issues for him. Blood clots. I mean, he almost died from blood clots. So he's got damage to his heart now, permanent damage to his heart due to some of the medication that they were giving him during treatment, caused blood clots in both his legs and both his lungs. And, so it just, you don't know what to expect. You don't know what to expect. And so we get past all of that, fast forward to 2025. We relocate. He does scans again. Every 6 months he's got to be scanned. They see some things on the scan, and then fortunately we have a very dear friend of ours, retired admiral, and he got us set up with MD Anderson Cancer Center in Houston, and they're deemed the best of the best in the world. People come from all over the world to to this cancer center, and they work miracles, and they're amazing from top to bottom. And so what the doctor said to us at that time is, okay, it has spread to his lungs. And you hear that, you go from stage 3C cancer in 2021 to stage 4. And of course, when you don't really know about the different stages, you think instantly, oh my goodness, this is terminal. He's not going to survive this. And it was a hard pill to swallow, just because you say, we've done everything right, we try to live right, and how could this be happening? But I will say that the doctors down at MD Anderson gave us a lot of hope, and they said that we think we can get through this. We'll do some surgeries and we'll do more treatment. Well, rewind back to 2021. My husband, he just didn't receive the chemo very well, and said, if this comes back to Lyra, I'm not going to go through this anymore. I'm not doing chemo again. I'm just going to let God do what he's going to do. And when it came back, I thought to myself, oh boy, he doesn't want to fight. He wants to give up. And so I asked him, I said, I really would love for you to fight for your family. And I don't know if that's selfish, but I need you to fight because we need you. And he agreed. And fast forward, did surgery. They got all the cancer out, which I was grateful for. Did chemo. It was tough. Just the anxiety of every visit to that treatment is, he would get frustrated and just very angry, and I could understand. I understand that it's scary. You don't like the way it makes you feel. It takes the life out of you. And I did everything that I thought I should do, from working 11 hours a day to coming home and juicing every single night. I can't tell you, I think my food bill was about $1,700 a month at Whole Foods, because I was there every couple of days buying fresh fruits and vegetables to juice for him every night when I got home from work. And I wanted to do everything I could to keep him alive, just so that I could make his life miserable for the next 50 years of marriage. I think just between prayer and remaining positive, we were able to get through it. And I know God has a plan for everyone, right? We could have done all those things and we could have lost him, but we didn't. And I'm grateful that he is still here. And if I had to care for him to that magnitude again, I would. There were days I would drop him off and he'd say, you don't have to stay here. You just leave me here. And I said, I wouldn't leave you here, because I wouldn't want anyone to do that to me. I wouldn't want that support system to be there. And so I would stay and wait and sit and wait and sit. And now it's just, again, cancer-free. He gets scanned every 90 days. He lives in 90-day windows, increments, because we don't know what the scans will say. And then, of course, there's the anxiety of going to those scans every 90 days? Is it coming back? Will it be more aggressive this time? There's always that fear and uncertainty. But we have decided that we will live every day as if it's our last, because you just don't know. But he's a strong one. And so I think that we will get through whatever we're faced with. And I'm just grateful to be here and hear you all's story. Thank you so much for sharing your stories. It just feels good to know that someone cares, and also you're not alone. You're not alone. You know, it may be a little bit different because you've lost your loved one, or your loved one is still currently fighting that battle. But we're in it together. And so I'm grateful knowing that I have the support of you all here. And Dr. Lawrence, again, thank you for allowing the caregivers to put out in the atmosphere what we go through on a daily basis. So thank you.
Your husband sounds like a handsome man.
Do you make him wear green and mauve sweatsuits?
Yeah, that's right. And this is the house attire. This is the house attire. No, well, thank you so much, Talira. Thank you so much, Monty. Just showing the spouse side, the spouse side. Again, I was not the best patient. I'm not the best patient. Like I said, the best part of MD Anderson, they actually just wrote an article on me. We're going through. Hold on, Monty, you saying something? You on mute though? Okay. The best part.
I was on mute, but before you said it, I knew what you were going to say.
The best part of MD Anderson are the pancakes. The pancakes. I tell you, I just go to MD Anderson just to get a pancake or two. You would not be disappointed. I wasn't paid to say that. I still could taste the cinnamon. just the pancake experience is delicious. So, but thank you so very much for sharing. You know, the caregivers go through it. They go through it. They go through it. Yes, the ones that are being cared for, they're going through it. But as you can see, the mother, the father, the husband, the wife, they have unique anxieties. They have unique aspects that they've dealt with and that they're currently dealing with. They're currently having, coping mechanisms so they can get through that next minute, the next hour, the next day, the next month. So I appreciate all your stories, and like any institution, any machine, it doesn't give you time. Life doesn't give you time to breathe. But especially an institution such as the U.S. military or a big industry like maybe AT&T, Wells Fargo, that machine just keeps on rolling. It don't allow you, no matter if you're a journeyman or CEO, it doesn't allow you to come off the hamster wheel. It may provide you a call with everybody's name on it. It may give you, a day or two to recalibrate, get your mind focused. But I'll see you on Monday. We still have the mission. And unfortunately, that's just, some of us, Dr. Dan Phillips, he can't have a bad day because his patients rely on him. Keisha, people, you see people all day in your face. You can't have a bad day because they're dependent on Keisha's experience for them to help for she to help them navigate some complexities in their lives. Monty and I, we've shared a unique experience in the military. We couldn't have bad days in the situations, in the positions that we were in. And T, just your uncompromising husband. It's just you can't have a bad day because he's just a grouchy guy. But
Season.
always hazing. That's right. Okay, so that being said, you know, uh, Scotty, your father promoted you to 1 star. Not soon thereafter, he passed away. And you spoke to us about your mother, um, and you shared in a video clip on leadership how you were going on a trip and you called the trip off because you just felt something. You just felt something wasn't right or something was just abnormal. You came to visit your mother and she was laying on the floor. For how long? I don't know. But, and then took her to get examined. Um, and UTI. Oh, by the way, during my journey with cancer, the second time I experienced a UTI on a trip. I was away from home, so I had to fly with a UTI. That's the next podcast. How I dealt with that. But and then later to find out the situation was not only a UTI, but it was dire. And then just us finding out tonight how you caregive for your in-laws. But during these times, every position in the military is a significant position, be they private E1 or 4-star general or admiral. You just had the opportunity to the initial time to be a 1-star, and now you pinned on 3-star, and not just any 3-star, but the 45th Surgeon General of the United States Army. So with that, given the pressures of the job, can you describe how similar positions not allow for proper physical, psychological, mental care needed, just to recalibrate and be Scotty again and not necessarily Lieutenant General Scotty Dingle? Sir, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Dr. Lawrence. I think that laugh was good. We all needed that laugh. And as I'm getting messages from a whole bunch of people out there watching this, they're talking about how tough it is, the stories that everyone is sharing. Yeah. And the reality of life is that we all are going to go through this tough time of caregiving, whether it's a loved one or whether if it's a parent, a son, a daughter, we're going to hit it. One of the things that I learned, as I was matriculating in my jobs was that there's no preparation for it. We can take measures and steps, but when it hits so hard. And that post-traumatic stress order, notice I said order, not disorder, because the pulling away of life of a loved one causes emotional unrest and tears and disappointment, and it hurts, and it's not a surprise because we love them and we hate to see them go through stuff, let alone die. And as caretakers, regardless of the title, I started, as you mentioned, Hank, as a 1-star, then a 2-star, 3-star. I lost my mom first, and as you mentioned, it was 23 days from the time I found her. I thought I was good. I thought I got it all out when you all were going. From the time I found her, leaving the job, because job has responsibilities and expectations. But the blessing of each of my jobs, even as a 3-star general, was that my bosses and the leadership allowed me time to be there, allowed me time for mourning, and allowed me time for counseling. And that's what good leadership does. It doesn't mean that the sun is still going to come back up tomorrow. And in spite the loss, you're going to have to get back up on the bicycle and keep riding because life is not going to stop. But the tough part is that you're going to go through that time where you lose your mojo. and I lost my mojo, but the leaders allowed me that time to get it back. As I was going through with my mom, again, I can't tell the story, but 23 days, found her and she passed away, colon cancer. My dad promoted me to 1-star.
Mm. Mm.
His dream, not mine. Because I wasn't going to do nobody's military. But yet, a praying dad, 1-star, and then died, heart failure, 3 months later. My mother-in-law, throat cancer. And being a caretaker, and your wife or your husband gives their job up to be a caretaker, you think that, because we're not trained, we think that, well, it's going to be a home hospice, and they're going to have care. Home hospice is the caretaker. It's us. It's you. I didn't expect that. No one trained us for that. And to mom-in-law pass right before, me officially taking the seat as the Surgeon General. And my sister-in-law, my daughter-in-law's mother, my sister Gigi, you talk about cancer patients wanting to do things their way, her battling cancer for years and finally said, no, I'm not. I'm going to Mexico with you all to enjoy life, quality of life. My dad, trying to be a caretaker and I'm trying to be disciplined. I'm military, I'm a man of steel. And I'm, Dad, what are you doing? You can't eat that. What are you doing eating that steak? And I was getting on my dad. And my dad said to me, Scotty, if I want to enjoy, if I want to enjoy my last steak, I'm going to enjoy it and have a quality of life. And as a caretaker, it awakened me that it's not by the rules, all the time, and it's not all the time by the rules. And so as those things that caretakers struggle with, it is a blessing when you have a leadership and a job that supports you being there. That's how the leadership, to answer the question, makes the difference. Allowing a caretaker to be there when you're going through. My office was in the hospital, the emergency room with my laptop, with my loved ones, my mom, my dad, my mom-in-laws, right there. It was therapy for me to be there with my laptop to keep my mind going as they're going through, as they're sleeping, as they're in surgery. But being there allowed that therapy, and those organizations and leadership that allow that to happen set us up for a smooth victory when they win, and a smooth victory when they don't win the battle against that disease or that fight that they had. But being able to be there is tremendous. I remember, talking to my wife and telling her that, man, I got to go to the emergency room again. I'm in the hospital again. I would give an arm and a leg to be back in that hospital one more time with that loved one, because it's post-traumatic stress order. So, Hank, to answer the question, it's allowing us to be there. It's allowing us to mourn. It's allowing us to go through counseling. But caretakers, remember this, as tough as it is, even in the midst of the battle, you got to have the tough discussions to allow that you are properly understanding, one, their conditions and what it is, and then preparation if things go wrong. As much as we hate to do it, don't want to talk about that. It was hardest discussions I've ever had. And to be honest with you, we didn't have successful discussions on all of those. It was pushed aside, and we're left having to deal with the the aftermath. But as the leaders and our bosses allow us to be there, allow us to mourn, and allow us to recover through counseling, remember that the sun is going to come back up, and we have to make that loved one proud by continuing on with the life while yet also recognizing their wishes as we're going through when they're good patients. And then when they get through, we make them wear green and mauve suits, swimsuits as punishment.
That's right. That's right. That's right. Hey, sir. Thank you very much. Thank you for tough discussions, difficult conversations. We don't like to have them. We don't like to have them. And culturally, I just know based on my proximity to my culture, we don't like to have those difficult conversations. Once you start talking about, I don't know what my wife is laughing at. Okay, but okay, so someone must have sent her a text. But so we don't like to have those conversations. But we have to have these conversations in order to make proper preparation, which we're going to talk about a little bit as far as a checklist that General Dingle provided me, because in a shock of the hour, I mean, you just sometimes you're not thinking so straight. You're just thinking very reactionary. This has to happen, that has to happen, that has to happen. Opposed to the planning. How should this thing look like before we even get there? Like, I'm dealing with some survivor's remorse because my mother had breast cancer and metastasized into bone cancer, and then I didn't get an opportunity to really be the caregiver that I should have, based on the pressures of the job, based on. So 2 weeks after I buried my mother, I was on a plane headed to Pakistan. And I think it's a little bit of fault of my own because I did not put the fist out to say, listen, I need to come out the game for a little bit to recalibrate, refocus. But, being a soldier like I was in a unique culture and environment in which I was, wasn't too many of us who was doing what I was doing. So I had a unique pressure on me that a lot of people didn't have, they didn't enjoy. So I had to be available all the time. And that would kind of led to, again, I struggle with just the trauma with my mother. But so that's my confession as far as not being there. My little brother, caregiving to the very last day, who stood in the gap. Antoine's probably 3 to 4 times bigger than me. He's a big guy, but he's a sweetheart. He's a sweetheart, and I love him to death. He's a better father, better son, better everything that I could ever do. But he carries some guilt as well. But I would say on this public platform, that Antoine, you did everything, and you have no guilt to carry forward. But with that, we have a few other questions that I like to throw out just to the group. And thank you, Scotty, for just being very transparent and very, vulnerable. Telling us the 3 situations, and prayerfully somebody has got something out of this. A mother, a father, a husband, a wife, and a son, a child, taking care of their loved ones. I pray that everybody's taking a little part and piece off of everyone here to make their story more complete. But I like to throw this question out to the husbands and the wives. Not a long conversation, just maybe a 30 second to minute response. Husband and the wives, How was a diagnosis? How has the diagnosis changed your relationship with the person you cared for, and how looking ahead and lessons learned like affected, the way that you navigate in the future? T, can you start us off?
I think for us, it brought us closer. Um, the vows, for better, for worse, sickness and health, definitely brought us closer. You learn how much you truly love a person when you're faced with caring for them. And going forward, as I stated before, we're just living every day. Um,
Oh, I think she froze.
as if it's our last. Oh, am I there? Are you there?
You're
Can you
there.
hear me?
We can
Okay,
hear you.
okay. But yeah, I just, for us, we really just, we were able to reconnect quite a bit, um, and we understand now the importance um, of love and how you treat people. And, you know, just
No, we broke up a little bit. We broke up a little bit, T, but I think we got it as far as how to treat people. We got it, and thank you so very much, Monty. How has the diagnosis changed your relationship, if it has, with your wife, caring for her now and looking ahead?
Individually, I would say, we're now part of the C Club. And whenever you come across somebody and, like this group, and you start the chat and you're like, oh, well, you know, cancer, cancer is a common denominator, and it's cathartic to relate. Maybe it's the story, or to relate just the niceties with folks like that. We didn't our living our best life is probably some trying to maintain normalcy. We didn't we talked about it. We didn't, after COVID restrictions, did we want to do a trip? And we're like, well, would we have done that before? Yeah, maybe not like that. So our normalcy is, enjoying the family that we have, kids, grandkids, and friends, especially as friends, as life happens, and you're a part of that with them, whether it's unfortunate, tragic events, or positive. Just kind of living in that moment, so to speak, with that. And I don't think it's all supposed to ever be easy, but just that journey that we're on, and trying to live that normal piece.
Had the wonderful opportunity. Uh-oh. Excellent. Well, thank you, Monty. I appreciate it. Thank you, man. I was hoping that my wife would not talk about the time that I broke my back, and had a back brace on. I had the neck thing and the back brace, and uh, the type of caregiver she had to give me back then, because let's just say uh, she's seen me in ways that my mother used to see me. So that's probably the next podcast. That's probably the next podcast. We're moving on to the mother and the father. Just understanding your unique experiences. How do you talk to children or other loved ones about cancer diagnoses? Dr. Phillips.
So for me, it was interesting because one of the things I'm really big about as a healthcare provider is communication. And, the other thing that was, interesting, you have doctors who have different types of styles. And our cancer surgeon. He was the type of guy I'd wear like jeans, he was very laid back, and that was part of his approach. And he would always say, oh, this is everything looks good, but we got this little spot right here. And, every time he would say it was a little spot, he'd say, I don't think it's anything to worry about. But that would turn out to be the next fire that needed to be put out. And for my son, it was very frustrating for him because, I've always been the type of person I try to tell you straight up, we don't come from a space where talking around stuff is going to be beneficial. So I remember my son used to be extremely frustrated with the cancer doctor because he felt like, why is this guy not telling me the truth? Every time he tells me there's nothing to worry about, that turns out to be what he needs to worry about. So, being a seasoned physician, I says, what, maybe, I don't know if it'll matter now with this situation, but maybe you need to look at a different approach, as far as how you communicate this, because you are providing this hope in a way, or you framing hope in a way that I don't think is realistic. And it turns out that what you're trying to be hopeful about always is the things we're worried. So, again, as a doctor, I can say that in a nice way or a nicer way so that, it's not only, feedback about my child, but it's also as a fellow member of the craft, it's me giving you some feedback as far as how you go about your communication. I can remember another time when he had surgery. I'm about 6'2". My son was about the same size as me, and he was only 15 years old at the time. And he had this surgery, and you have to be on this complicated pain regimen to manage his symptoms. And I remember we were at Johns Hopkins Hospital, and the surgeon or the anesthesiologist who was managing his pain came in, and she had all of the resident doctors and the medical students with her. And I don't know why she didn't read the chart and know that I was a physician, but in any case, she starts communicating to him about short-acting pain meds, long-acting pain meds. And, again, it was stuff that was over his head. So I said, look, I wish you would have read the chart, because you would know that you and I do the same thing. I'm a physician. I teach at a medical school. I do all this stuff. But I think you're confusing that this is a 15-year-old guy. And I know I went to a great high school, but still, even with that great education, I didn't understand these concepts at 15, and you're not, bringing it down. And I said, why don't we do this? Why don't you step out the room and then come back in and let's start all over again? She got a little indignant in her feelings, but at the end of the day, I can remember one of the resident doctors that after we finished the visit, they were walking out. They were like, thank you very much. But the point I would say in as far as the communication, I think as far as the doctor, you got to make sure they communicate things to you in an understandable way. I mean, as a person who believes in the concept of health literacy, which is making sure that any type of communicated medical information is understandable, whether it's spoken, whether it's written, making sure that individuals understand what you're saying. I think that's incredibly important. And because I'm in that space professionally, I have the confidence to say, hey, doc, why don't you step outside and let's start all over again? Whereas a lot of other people wouldn't do that. And I think the other thing that is incredibly helpful is from the standpoint of the patient and the families, especially if you have a big family, you might want to designate one or two people to be the individuals that communicate with the care team, and then they can bring the information back to the family. Because just like anything else, if you got too many cooks in the kitchen, things unfortunately can get kind of confusing. And then, we've all seen just now, just the emotion with us sharing our stories. I can only imagine, when you got cousin so-and-so, or aunt so-and-so, or uncle so-and-so in the room, they may not be as skilled in handling how they manage their emotions. And for the people that are taking care, I mean, I know when I've seen patients, everybody coming in the room looks like me. To the doctors, they're like, oh my God, they can get afraid, unfortunately, and that can unfortunately color the situation in a negative way. So I guess my point is, number one, you have the right to say, I don't understand what you mean by that. Could you explain it in layman's terms or in language that I understand? I think you have the right to have questions, but I think, I look at the age of the people here on the phone, on the call. All of us are of the age that we probably heard people say, you don't want to bother the doctor, they're busy. And I think many times people tailor or they don't ask their questions because they have this historical respect for the medical profession, which I appreciate. However, when you're going through something that is as emotional and as significant as taking care of somebody with a chronic condition like cancer, but it could be diabetes, it could be heart disease, I think it's important to understand. And I think the last thing I would say, and I think somebody mentioned it a few moments ago, having an understanding of what the wishes are of the patient are critical, because again, these moments can make the cousin or the sibling that may not have been involved with that person for years, now they're coming in with their own baggage, and that can pollute what you're trying to accomplish. So number one, make sure you get your questions answered. Make sure that you're able to understand what is being communicated to you. And if you don't, you have the right to say, I don't understand. Could you explain that a little better? I think also you got the right to say to your doctor, hey, could you try a different way to communicate this? Because the hopeful, the way that you're presenting it is not helping the situation. Because I know with my own son, he lost respect for the doctor, because as a man, I've always taught him, men say what they mean what they say. And this guy, he felt, was double talking him every time he was there. And unfortunately, towards the end of our relationship with that doctor, it probably didn't make my son walk away with a positive feeling about him, because he didn't trust what he was saying. Because I think that's another concept, is the idea of what is hope. Because a lot of times people think hope is telling me that there's a cure and that it's going to get better. But I will tell you, one of the most hopeful moments of my process and journey was when we got hospice, because we had some relief and clarity on how we were going to manage the situation. So I think, again, it's important to make sure that you engage that doctor in a way so that that doctor or healthcare team communicates with you. And keep it simple. A lot of times we know the drama in our family, and if we don't police it on the front end, it's going to manifest itself in other ways. And as a physician, I have seen, unfortunately, how the negative things that may go on in the family can be brought to the head, in these moments. So I think from a family standpoint, it's always important to understand what the desires are of the patient, but also, recognize whatever drama or circumstances that you as a family might have. So you set up a situation that makes the communication and engagement with the medical team as productive as possible, because they don't have to be accepting of your family drama, even though you might be accepting of it. So again, that's what I would say as far as the communication part.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Phillips. We appreciate, your insight and, just being on both sides of the fence, seeing, both factors. Keisha, you have anything to add to this?
I'm over here in the amen corner. What?
Amen corner.
In the amen corner. I think for me, in my family, one of the hardest parts was hospice was challenging for us. And I get it, because hospice came in, they allowed him to be, my son, to be more comforted and all the things. However, and how do I want to say this? It was all the things that you said, I agree with. I agree with the challenges of the doctors and physicians not sharing information in a real way. And when you ask them for it, then they still want to create this space of what they deem as hope. Um, Fortunately, I had my uncle who is a physician in Google. For me, I took all of the charts, not saying that Google is a medical professional, but it was able to take some of the reports for me, and I can underline, I can break it down, I can understand better. So when the doctors came to me and would say, oh, well, the lesion is kind of doing a little this with radiation and it's a centimeter this and it's such and such. I said, well, it said that on the right side, it got a little bigger. What did I read? And so I pulled them to the carpet on what the reports said, which mattered. And I feel like they didn't think that I was equipping myself to have conversations with them. One, two, because my son was 19 years old during most of his treatment, I did not allow them to talk to me, but to talk to him because he's the patient. But no trust and believe. I'm his mom. I'm going to be here. And what activated on the inside of me was my lioness who was ready to pounce on whomever. And a few of the doctors did get it. And I am gracious to those doctors for allowing me an opportunity to say what was on my heart, because I know that they have a lot of patients. But guess what? Every patient who's in there have a loved one who cares about them. And the only one that we care about is the one who in the bed.
That's
But the
right.
doctors have to care about all of the ones who are on their charts. So I get it. So I'm gracious for that. But when it came down to talking about when my son got into hospice, it was challenging for me because the writing was on the wall.
Right.
When it came down to how his body was deteriorating. And my family was not prepared to have the conversation of, let's preset some things with the funeral home. Let's get some of these documents filled out that the funeral home had sent. Who's going to sign this DNR, and what actually happens. Because one of the things that Cameron was very aware of was what was happening. I remember him clearly waking up in the middle of the night and saying to me, Mama, what's happening to me? Or why is the man in white constantly trying to come get me? And I'm like, describe him to me. And he did, very vivid. So I'm well aware that he was understanding, but because they wanted to sugarcoat some of the language when he was gonna die, then I had to be the one to have that conversation with him. And I am the parent who will have all of the uncomfortable conversations, even in difficult times, knowing that I may not have all of the answers, but I'm willing. I'm willing to let them ask me whatever it is. I've always done that with my children.
Yes, ma'am.
So when he had all of the issues of his heart, I was there to listen. Every time he got through a pain cycle that would not break, I would always encourage him the best I could because my body wasn't going through that pain. His cancer was wrapped around his sacrum. When it began to grow, he would tell me, Mama, I feel it growing. And when it grew out of his anus. It was awful, very painful. Fortunately, I know some people who own a hospice team. And the lady who closed out his paperwork, she said, oh my God, Keisha, I just want to call and pray for you. Because the pain that was written on the paper is probably far worse, far worse. So when it comes down to what the person wants, it's important to being able to explain what those medical power of attorneys are. That's important. When it comes to making sure that everyone knows of the stuff that needs to be on that the funeral home would want, those things are important. All of those things. There's some very uncomfortable conversations to have. But the reality is these bodies are not meant to last on this earth forever. So have those uncomfortable conversations.
Thank you so very much. We're getting close to the hour. And I appreciate it. And you know, you're talking about tools being properly prepared and allowing the patient their voice to be heard, opposed to everybody speaking for the patient. But I admire everybody as a caregiver here and just the courage that you've demonstrated. You know, the moral courage, the physical courage is easy, but just being in it day in and day out, and you want to sit down, but something inside you won't allow you to sit down. So the final word, Scotty, General Dingle, we want to hear what was the most valuable resource you found, and which ones would you recommend to new caregivers?
No, thanks, Hank. Great point. And just to close out Keisha, you know, one thing that she highlighted was emotion, and you talked about it too, Hank. We can't let our emotions get in the way of what you're going through. As a caregiver, as you're going through taking care of that loved one, you can't let your emotions put you in the way of good care. And you can't let your emotions keep you away from being there for your loved one, because time is unforgiving and you can't get that time back. You have the animate things that are good resources, of course, common sense, you know, the providers, the treatment team, patient advocates, counselors, all those things to help you navigate this tough window of being a caregiver in preparation for worst case, but yet also if they're getting well, you still need to have that in place anyway. So either way, it doesn't make a difference. But the inanimate things that I think are the most valuable resources that everyone needs to take away is one, time. Time is unforgiving. Spend the time wisely while you can, because if you make the wrong decision emotionally, you can't get that time back. You know, God willing, they're going to come out of it, but during that time, you want to be there. And in spite of the pressures of life and the jobs, at the end of the day, you know, when that job is over, they're going to forget about you, you know, but you can't get that time back that you spent with the loved one, God forbid, if they are called home. But be there for the loved one. Time is unforgiving. Don't feel guilty about taking time to be with your loved one. And then the second one you mentioned earlier, my church, we did a state of affairs planning session. And one of the most valuable things that I wish I would have had years ago was a list that talks about 125 tasks that you need to consider on the most difficult day of your life. And now don't get it twisted. What this is talking about is the tough discussions and things that you need to know for the one that you're providing the care for. You know, as Keisha mentioned, you need to have these discussions. You need to know the information just in case, one, the worst is about to happen or the worst happens. If it doesn't happen and it comes out in a good, favorable way, you still need to have the state of affairs and desires of the loved one in order. And oh yeah, by the way, it's not just for them, but it's for us, from each of us. We need to have ours in order, those questions answered, shared with the loved ones. You know, because, you know, mom and dad or son or daughter and our loved one, you know, can always say what they don't want. And you remember, well, I remember saying, I don't want to be on life support. I don't want to do this. You know, you remember it, but you got to make sure that you have all their wishes, downs, and the affairs in order. So this checklist is the most valuable thing that I wish I would have had years ago. But it's also, I'm glad I have it now so that as my family and loved ones, I've shared this with all of them so that we can each have those hard discussions. And this also will help you facilitate that tough discussion because you're going to run into times they're not going to be feeling like talking about it. They're not going to want to talk about it, but use this as that thing for them to look out to help generate the discussion. And remember, don't go into the Kung Fu stance and getting emotional because you got to be stable to ensure that you're providing the care for your loved ones. So this is a tremendous resource. Please, you have it there. I'm sure Dr. Lawrence will send it out to everyone or ask him for it or ask me for it or ask anyone on this podcast. It is life-changing. And again, I wish I would have had it because I didn't do all the discussion successfully with my loved ones before they left.
Excellent segue. We have about 9 minutes left, and I just want to thank our panelists for just carving out the last hour and 51 minutes of their life to allow us the opportunity to peek into their life, to peek into their world, so we can make our world a little bit better. Nobody raises their hand to say, I want to be a next caregiver. I want to be this. I want to be that with respect to caregiving. Nobody raises their hand, but when it happens, when the shock of the hour happens, how are you prepared? So with that, I want to thank our panelists for, again, the time that you've allotted us this evening. And with this, I'm going to put you in the backstage, and I'm going to close out accordingly, and we will reconvene some other time. But thank you, wife. Thank you, husband. Thank you, mom. Thank you, father. And thank you, son. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, again, I just want to bring up again the checklist. The checklist is, when the shock of the hour happens, a lot of things are going to happen. The family pulling, pushing, deteriorating, getting stronger, but at least you have something in front of you that you go down the line and check off. Did I do this? Did they do that? And first of all, let's do this before. Let's do it now. Let's do it now. Let's prepare for war, because when that happens, it's all out warfare, and it's going to be too late for us to prepare at that period of time. So therefore, I encourage us to take a look at this list and go through with your family and have that hard conversation. Yes, we talk about social preparedness. We talk about social tools that we spoke to in this podcast. However, this is more tangible. This is power of attorneys. This is ceremonies and so forth. And this will be posted on A Bridge to Light. It'll be posted on our YouTube page, Instagram page. We'll continue to scatter it throughout our LinkedIn page, because this is business. This is business. So we have to take care of business in the highest way, in the highest manners, to ensure that we can survive as a family and not be broken up. Also, I would like you to see in the corner there, it says the post event survey. Please take advantage. Please take a look at that. And did you learn anything this evening? Did you learn anything? Is it something that we could do better in the future with respect to these unique events? Please, we want to hear your voice. We want to hear your voice and acknowledge it for future actions and activities. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, our purpose here tonight was to initiate, advance the conversation around the effects of caregiving. And I hope we checked that box. I hope that we did that. Also, identify issues, sensitivities associated with caregiving for someone with a terminal disease. And I pray that we achieved these objectives and more. And lastly, provide insights and tools. Like we just provided you this actual tangible tool, but the tools of their lived experiences will help you navigate the uncertainty of one that has a chronic disease. So although these conversations were focused on cancer, and being a cancer for cancer patients. Being a caregiver when dealing with any disease, be it mental illness, must be acknowledged and it must be addressed. Um, Nowadays, we just had an individual. They were dealing with a family with mental illness, and that person took their lives. So we have to, how are we caring for the caregiver? Who cares for the caregiver? No matter how small or large, we want to acknowledge that they are caregiving and that we see them. And most importantly, we're getting beyond just hearing them, but we're listening. We're listening not only with our ears, but we're seeing you. We're feeling you. We're understanding the issues that you're going through. And one more acknowledgement. Like any other nonprofit organization, we just want to fundraise whenever we can, and just show your support to a Bridge to Light if you can by purchasing a T-shirt. Let's make our community a safer place to live by making the N.E.T, the neighborhood enhancement training. How we're enhancing our neighborhoods through specialized training such as this to make the N.E.T work. Make the N.E.T work. So if you can, please purchase a T-shirt. This fundraiser will be up in a couple of days, and we appreciate all the nickels and dimes that you will provide us in the future. And with that, again, this is Dr. Lawrence from A Bridge to Light. We focus on not only disrupting the school or prison pipeline and enabling the reentry of formerly incarcerated persons, but we further facilitate empowering those that accessing to human resources, our human needs, such as information about chronic diseases, about access to education, healthcare, jobs, was a barrier between them and us in achieving human needs. How do we close that gap? So Bridge Light is here to do that. And we're particularly focused on, protection of womanhood, intentional mentorship, and chronic disease awareness. With that, as we always say, let's learn together and let's make the N.E.T work. Have a good evening, and thank you for meeting with us this evening. Bye-bye.